Welcome back. After 2 years of virtual meetings, all congregations of Jehovah's Witnesses across the world will return to in person gatherings. Joining me to discuss what this return could look like for their members is National Spokesman for Jehovah's Witnesses, Robert J. Hendriks. Robert, thank you so much for joining me.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having us.
So, how has the COVID-19 pandemic actually affected your organization? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
It's been a journey. There's no doubt about it. March 20th of 2020, we went to a virtual ministry and meetings in the United States, and globally, we canceled all of our in-person meetings sometime in May and June. So it's been the majority of 2 years that Jehovah's Witnesses have been meeting through video conferencing. So it has definitely been a journey. I think the beginning, like from so many other people, there were a lot of unknowns. And for a very public organization like Jehovah's Witnesses, who meet in public, have almost 6,000 conventions that are public conventions around the world. We invite people to our meetings. We go door to door. It was a shock to the system. There's no doubt about it. And we wondered at the time how we would continue forward. What would be the way that we would do it? And within really days of us shutting all Kingdom halls and suspending our in-person ministry, we had a plan. And so we have not missed a meeting. In fact, we've had 2 meetings each week over the last 2 years. Our meetings are not simply, you can't just put it on YouTube and stream it because they're interactive. And so we immediately went to Zoom Corporation, and we made a global agreement with Zoom. And we outfitted our congregations around the world with the technology so that we could not only see our congregants during our twice weekly meetings, but we also hear from them. And for all of us, for all Jehovah's Witnesses, we had to continue to go back to our bedrock principles, because our preference was to be in person. Our preference was to go see our neighbors. But the principles of love and love of neighbor and love of life, the sacredness of life, had to transcend our personal desires. And that's exactly what has happened over the last 2 years. And we look back, and it's been a wise move.
Now, to ensure a safe and effective transition, your organization held a pilot program in October and November. Can you actually tell me a little bit more about that?
Certainly. We looked at our branch territory, which includes Puerto Rico, and we looked at what were some areas where there was a very low infection rate, almost no infection rate, and a very high vaccination rate. And we took a few congregations in Puerto Rico. We took a few congregations in Connecticut where we had the same situation. And we began holding an in-person meeting for a few weeks. Now, these meetings were different for Jehovah's Witnesses because they were hybrid. It's the first time that we were not only looking to have people inside a Kingdom Hall, and that would have been the first time back in almost 2 years, but also outfitting our Kingdom halls with the technology to be able to bring people in through technology, not only stream it out, but also discussion based over the PA system so that everybody would hear the discussions coming remotely and also the in-person discussions. And that went very well. In fact, what we did was we learned a lot. We learned what works, what doesn't work, what policies we needed to put into place. We honed our ability to prepare our halls, our congregation meeting places, that we call them Kingdom halls, from not only a technological perspective, but also from a sanitary perspective. We made sure that touching things was minimal, and we put all our mics on booms. We outfitted our congregations at the time, our Kingdom halls, with hand sanitizers, with the proper protocols in order to start a meeting. And now we've also added to that proper signage as well. So I think we're ready. I think those in-person meetings, they not only happen in the United States, but they happen in other areas of the world as well. As an organization, we collected that information, and we've come up with what we think is a very workable plan to move forward, hopefully permanently. Certainly in the near term, that's what we'll be doing, hybrid meetings.
So I know you have guidelines for holding hybrid meetings. Were those some of those that you just listed right now?
Yeah, so we started off with the health protocols. That was the key. But also, as we developed the pilot, we continue to refine the guidelines on how to hold a meeting. It's easy to think about, right? Technology is easy. We're talking right now with each other. Technologically, we're not in the same place, right? So we knew that that was possible, but our congregations just weren't outfitted for those things. And then, what are the policies? Where do you initiate the meeting? Where do you have a remote speaker? Should that be allowed? Do you have a remote chairman, or should that person be at the Kingdom Hall? How does masking work? If you have voluntary masking, and the majority, in the case of Puerto Rico and Connecticut, everybody was masked. They chose to wear a mask. How does that work with singing, and how does that work with answering? All of those things, participation, all of those things really were worked out, and being able to refine the guidelines over that pilot period and then actually release them to the world has been very beneficial in preparing our meetings, not just for the meeting, but prior to the meeting and then after the meeting, how to sanitize and how to get to the next meeting.
Now, I have some pretty exciting news, or I think this is pretty exciting. Your organization is actually going to have 2 global events to kick off this return. Can you actually tell me about these events?
Well, it's interesting, the timing. This time of year for Jehovah's Witnesses, and really on the Christian calendar, this is the most important time of year because this is when Jesus gave his life on behalf of humanity, behalf of mankind. And so in April, we'll have 2 global events, so just in time for us opening in person in most areas where governments will allow us to open and have a number of people in the Kingdom Hall. But we'll have 2 global events. The first is on April 10th, and it's a special lecture. This will happen in every congregation around the globe. And the question that we'll be answering in that lecture is, where can you find true hope, real hope? Where can you find real hope? And that special lecture goes through the times that we're living in, how many, especially over the last 2 years, have been left hopeless, but how there's reasons for hope. Why we're dealing with the problems that we're facing now, and what is the hope ahead, and why can we trust it? So that's on April 10th. That very same week, on April 15th, 1 out of every 134 people in this country will be attending our commemoration of Jesus' death. We call it the memorial, the Lord's evening meal. Some call it the Last Supper. It's that special event that Jesus instituted with his apostles on the final night of his life, where he said to them in Luke chapter 22, verse 19, "Keep doing this in remembrance of me." And so that's what we've done. We like many other faiths, we commemorate that day, except the difference for Jehovah's Witnesses is we actually commemorate on the very night that he gave his life. So Friday, the 15th, would have been the night that he gathered with his apostles. And then the following day, he would have given his life on our behalf. And so it follows that pattern. It doesn't always fall on a Friday. It just happens to this year. And it's really beautiful. It's very special to be in that place, commemorating that event, in the very same day Jesus did it, along with 240 other nations around the world, and some 22 million people globally will be gathering on that day.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, can you tell me about your organization's public ministry? I understand they were a huge part of your organization, seeing over 1.5 million people a week pre-pandemic. How has that changed, and what are your plans for the future?
Well, when we look at our public ministry, it's still going to remain a ministry of letter writing, virtual Bible studies, and phone calls. We feel like our meetings, you have a choice. You can come or not come. In fact, even our congregants will have a choice. They'll be able to come to the meeting, and if they feel comfortable, or they'll be able to stay wherever they are and tune into the meeting virtually. So that's a choice that people will make. But when we go back to our neighbors, we'll be knocking on doors. And so we're not going to give our neighbors a choice. And so we don't feel that it's time yet, but we feel strongly that in the future there will be time that we'll be resuming our public ministry in some fashion, maybe the cart witnessing first in our cities and subways and train stations, and byways, but certainly knocking on doors sometime in the future. That is Acts 2020. That's the Christian way, and that's what we'll continue to do, no doubt, in the future at some point.
Now, I know previously you mentioned that you wasted no time over these past 2 years, and that you all been very busy and productive helping each other and their neighbors. Could you quickly tell me more about those efforts?
Well, this is some statistics that are pretty marvelous. One is that since March 2020 to November 2021, Jehovah's Witnesses just in the United States have spent some 400 million, in excess of 400 million hours, writing tens of millions of letters of comfort to their neighbors, making phone calls or conducting virtual Bible studies and return calls on people. That's extraordinary. We have released 77 new translations of the Bible in 77 new languages during that period of time. We held 2 global conventions for the world in 239 lands in 500 different languages. And we've had 1.5 million, in excess of 1.5 million on average, every meeting over that period of time. And there's only fewer than 1.3 million Jehovah's Witnesses in the United States. So we've been active, we've been productive. We've also added some 400,000 baptized Jehovah's Witnesses to our ranks over the course globally, over the course of the past 2 years. So we're happy where we are. We feel like we come out of this stronger and better and caring even more for each other and our neighbors.
Robert, thank you so much for joining me. We really appreciate you coming here and letting everybody know. Can you just lastly, quickly, we have no more time left, but can you just let everybody know the actual date the doors will open?
Well, they can go to jw.org and they'll see it, but it's April 10th. That's our global event, special Where Can You Find Real Hope, and April 15th, our memorial. And you probably can even catch a meeting on April 2nd or 3rd at your local Kingdom Hall.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's all for our show today. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.